All right, so we're going to be going over a new tool in ProteinBlender to create and edit and animate DNA. So first, make sure you're in the ProteinBlender tab, and you'll notice that there's a button here called Create New DNA RNA under Builder. So let's click on that and take a look at some of the options. So you can build DNA or RNA. You can have it go by specific sequence or a specific length. And you can have double-stranded, single-stranded. The winding lets you be either a helical or have a ladder, a straight ladder. Let's just go with the default to see what it looks like. So we can zoom in here, take a look at the color. So this is a ball and stick model of DNA. And we can also take a look at the RNA. And let's take a look at the cartoon. And here's a model of RNA. And I'm just clicking on this little pencil button to edit it. So for this particular animation, we want to have a double-stranded DNA. So let's create that. And what we want to do is create an animation that shows a protein, the TATA binding protein, coming in and basically binding and bending this DNA. So we're going to first bring in our protein. So in the PDB, 1TGH is what we want. Download. What you can see here is that we have, if we hide our DNA for a second, we have 3 chains. We have a protein here, this is TBP, and then we have 2 additional chains, which is double-stranded DNA. And so you can see if we just hide the protein that the DNA is super curved here. And so that's what we are going to want to animate, is the binding and then inducing this kind of curvature. All right, so we're going to start by basically trying to adjust. We're going to start at the, probably starting at the end of the animation. I'm going to select this PDB and I'm going to move it a little bit and rotate it so that the DNA is basically kind of aligned where we want it to be in the animation. I'm going to rotate this a little bit. So that's keeping the DNA relatively straight. And now we are going to create a puppet with this model so that we can animate it. So I have the entire PDB selected here. I'm going to scroll down and say create new puppet. This will be called TBP. Okay. And I'm going to come over to maybe like frame 120 or so, and I'm going to create a keyframe here of just TBP. And the idea is I want the TBP to be bound here and with the DNA bent, and I'm going to move back. And this is like before the DNA starts, right when TBP kind of gets pretty close, but DNA hasn't started bending yet. So I'm going to move it back a little bit. Maybe move it like this. Just small adjustments so that kind of TBP is coming in, but hasn't come in all the way yet. So I'm just going to rotate it a bit. That maybe. And I'm going to create another keyframe. TBP. Okay, so now we can kind of watch TBP is just kind of slowly coming in. So at this point, at frame 120, we want to bend the DNA so that it follows the kind of curvature that we see here. So for that, we might want to just hide the protein and kind of deal with the DNA. So we haven't introduced a way to bend the DNA, so we need to do that. So we're going to click on the pencil, and under the shape, there's this button called Add Bend Control. So we'll click on that. And what it does is it adds these little kind of spheres that allows us to bend the DNA. And it starts default is 3. We're going to want, I think, 5 and say OK. And so you can see that there's these little circles here and you can move those around. So if we translate that, you can see this bends the DNA. So I'm going to undo that. And what we want to do is we're going to start with like basically pretty straight DNA, and then we're going to have it bend by 120. So 96, we're going to have the DNA straight. So we're going to create a new keyframe here. We can edit this keyframe and we can keyframe the DNA in here as well. So we'll do that. And then at 120, we're going to bend the DNA so it kind of matches this shape. So this will be kind of at the center of that C. This one is going to be, just want to make sure it's completely as aligned as you can get it. And maybe we have to move this part of the C DNA as well. So I think that's looking pretty good. We can also move these endpoints. You might note there's a kind of a line of that shows you the curvature of the DNA. So that isn't going to get rendered at the end. It's just kind of there so you can see the curvature. So that, yeah, that won't be part of the render. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. So we're going to want to keyframe this. So we're going to edit this keyframe and make sure the DNA is also selected. And now you can see we have this sort of like bending. So let's bring back our protein. And we're going to hide these DNA strands since we don't actually want to render those. So you can see what happens is protein comes in kind of and induces this bending. And so we'll add another keyframe where the protein is just kind of moved back here. It kind of comes in, kind of move it up, add that keyframe. Maybe one more keyframe in here. Move it up a little bit. And just on TBP. Okay, so you can see we have TBP coming in, and that showing, and then kind of bends that DNA as it binds. Okay,